Hey guys, what's going on? I figured I'd give you guys a quick tour of the top enclosure, which I brought in last night. So yeah, let's jump right into it. Alright, so we're going to start off with the hot side. Right now, I just kind of have the bare bones going. Just the basking lamp array. What you see in front of you actually right now is my handy dandy coffee warmer. Ingenuity, you know. It's basically just a general setup right now. I just wanted to give these lamps a test run just to make sure that my basking surface and my lamps were positioned correctly, which they are. I still need to add the basking platform itself, which will come later. Let's just jump up right up on top here. I'll just let you know what I'm working with right now. So on the left hand side, you just have two halogen floods. These are par 20 Sylvania floods. These are double life floods, so they're rated I think at 3,000 hours per lamp. Which gives me a pretty good lifespan out of each lamp. On the right hand side, you have an Iwasaki or I. These are color arc. It's a 70 watt metal halide, 6500K lamp. This is used primarily for UVA and lux output. Compared to the halogens, this lamp is going to put out a lot more light and a lot more UVA. It needs an external ballast to run, which is mounted just above the fixture itself. And the fixture itself is a porcelain lamp holder, just your basic porcelain lamp holder. It's rated for pretty high wattage, so that's why it's used. The lamp holder holding the halogen floods is just a outdoor fixture with the adjustable lamp holders attached. I use two of them. The reason why I use these is for that reason alone. The fact that I can angle my lamps wherever I need them and fine-tune them down at the surface. That's the biggest benefit to using this type of fixture. What I do need to add is a T5 high output fixture here, which is going to be housing a Arcadia 14% bulb. Okay, so let's head back down here. What you see here, this crack in this tile right here, this is not permanent. This is just so I can get a finger in there, pop this tile out, and I'll show you what we got underneath. So here we have an upside down tile with a thermostat probe attached to it, taped down using a good aluminum foil tape. The sides are lined with 1/8 inch plexi. That's to keep moisture away from the plywood box itself. There's no specific reason why I use this color tone, the yellow and the blue. Just so happens that my father had some extra 1/8 inch plexi left over, and that was the color. So that's what I went with. There's no real science behind it at all. Here we have the flexible tube, which is used for the Burrow entrance, and we'll get to that in a minute. But let me touch on why I use this tile here and why the probe is taped down, etc., etc. So this tile acts as a heat sink. There's actually an under tank heater attached to the bottom of this tile. It's not sandwiched between the plywood and the tile itself. It's just the UTH attached to the tile, and that's it. There's nothing between that and the UTH. The reason why I tape this probe down is so that the probe doesn't get dislodged and the under tank heater overheats, because that can cause some problems. That can cause a fire, that can cause a dead animal, a myriad of things that you don't want. So that's why this is taped down, just to make sure it doesn't get dislodged. So what I'll do later is I'll actually just pour a thin layer of concrete over the top of this, just so the tape can't get peeled up. I don't want anything to happen here, so I want to make sure that doesn't go anywhere. Basically, the reason why I do this is to not only create a thermal zone inside of the box itself, or a thermal gradient, I should say, inside of the box itself, but it also heats the substrate, which makes for a great nesting area for females. So once I fill this up with some sand, a sand mix, The females will typically lay over this area because this substrate will be heated to an ideal nesting temperature. Right now it's probably somewhere around 96, 97 degrees. It's 96 here. 96.5. As you can see, 97, 96.5. So this is exactly what we want. The thermostat is going to keep that temperature pretty steady. So again, no overheating, and it's going to maintain an ideal nesting temperature. I can adjust that obviously in the off season. I can cut that off if I need to. So let's move over here. So right here we have the burrow entrance itself. Basically what I did was I cut a hole in the tile using an angle grinder and a diamond wheel. I cut a hole in it. I kind of threaded this pipe up through that hole. It sat about an inch above the tile here. And I took a concrete mix, surrounded it, and then I just kind of popped in some of these pebbles all the way around, and then later added these additional pebbles on top of it. I either affixed that in place with the leftover concrete, or I just took some GE1 100% silicone without mold inhibitors and just kind of dabbed a little bit on the bottom of each pebble and just kind of affixed it in place that way. Any of the areas where you can see some of the silicone protruding, I just kind of added a little bit of the sand right here. Just doing one of these, you know. Just added that around it just so you don't see the actual silicone itself. This gives it, obviously, as you can see, a more naturalistic appearance. It's something that I was going for with this enclosure. Even though the tile floor isn't perfect, but I mean the reason I use it is just because it's just really easy to clean. It lasts forever. It's minimal work to do with it. There's no dust, obviously. So those are big benefits. I did the same thing back there, as you can see, with the palm. Let's see, I'll give you guys a little bit better of a look at this. We'll kind of zoom in here. Okay. Alright, so what I did here, like I did with the burrow entrance, I cut a hole in the tile, and then actually it went through the subfloor of the enclosure itself. So it went through the 3/4 inch plywood below that. So then I had just a hole directly right through, right to, you know, the bottom of the enclosure. Or actually, I should say right through the bottom of the enclosure. Then from there, I dropped an 8-inch pot, which you can see here on the perimeter. And then I ended up dropping the 6-inch pot, which the palm is currently planted in, inside of that, and then I filled up the perimeter of that with this small stone, this pea stone here, pea gravel. That helps keep this pot in place. And the reason I did this is just because in the future, when I go to repot this plant, I can just pull this 6-inch pot out, pull the pebbles out, fill that 8-inch pot up with some decent soil for this plant, and then replant this plant right back inside of that. Now, what you see around it right now are some larger stones, which I will end up attaching in place just like this around the perimeter of the plant. Now, the reason I'm going to do that is to prevent the animal from excavating any of these roots. These root systems take forever to grow for this plant, and I don't want the animal to kill the plant prematurely. Obviously, this is kind of a long-term investment. So anything I can do to avoid that, I'm going to do. So that's why I have these larger stones up here. I'm not sure exactly how I'm going to put these in place. The other one, the bottom enclosure, I actually just kind of silicone these in place, so that way I can just kind of pop them off later. It's not a big deal. So yeah, that's what we got there. Now let's kind of touch on the plant itself. Alright, so I went with this is called a ponytail palm. That's just layman's terms. So if you were to go to your local nursery, that's what you would be looking for. This plant is actually going to perform pretty well inside of these conditions, dry and hot area. It needs to be watered minimally, so that's not an issue. It's very robust. It's gonna last. It's gonna go through some punishment if the animal decides to climb on it, which it will. Ornates love to climb, so they will be climbing up on top of this plant. Not only that, it's non-toxic, which is a huge benefit. Obviously, I'm not trying to poison my animals. So if the animal does decide it wants to take a bite out of this plant, it'll live. Luckily for me, this is kind of fibrous. They don't like to chew really fibrous plants. So if it does decide it wants to take a nibble, it's only going to do just that, just a nibble. Otherwise, the plant would be gone, within a few weeks, if it were actually edible. Aside from that, they're slow growers, which is great because these plants get enormous after some decades, that is. So this plant right here should be in here for a long time, I hope, assuming it doesn't die prematurely of something else. I'm hoping that, I only have to repot it once, and then after that, if I need to take it out because it grew too large, I can just remove the pot, take it out, and then replace it with a smaller plant. Alright, so that's pretty much it for now. It's getting there. I still, have some stuff to do. So hopefully, by the end of this week or maybe into the beginning of next week, I should have everything done. Hopefully by then I find some decent root systems that I can add in here just for some decor and some climbing, some enrichment. Aside from that, I need the basking surface to be put into place, and then some hides. And that's pretty much it. So yeah, it's getting there. So hopefully you guys see a video from me within the next couple weeks of these two enclosures finalized with some animals in it, I hope. So until then.